Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Kay, and I'm here today to discuss Beyond the Gates Season 2, Episode 114. Okay, so I seen a lot of my cousins was mad yesterday after the episode aired, and I was just like, And I saw a few clips myself, but I don't think I necessarily have the same take as everyone else. I know that a lot of people were upset, and I know that a lot of people feel like I know a lot of people feel like the writers are possibly being one-sided, but I feel like sometimes people can be so set seeing things one way that they blot out in their mind that sometimes there's also another thing that can also be true. Like, for example, 2 plus 2 is 4 for sure, but that doesn't negate the fact that the sky is still blue. You know what I mean? I know that probably sounds so outlandish, but I have been saying for a couple of videos, y'all, this in time sequence on the show, it's only been like 2 days, but it's been 2 weeks for us, so we've been like dwelling with this. And so I feel like people have decided, they want to pick a side. And, I don't necessarily feel like it has to be that way. I feel like, there could be some understanding on both sides, I know this is just a show, but we get so caught up in the entertainment of it all. Sometimes I think we miss the story that they're telling. And like I said, for a couple of days I've been telling y'all that I've been conflicted, and I never hated Kat. I never had anything against Kat. I never also had anything against Eva. There were times during season 1 and season 2 where there were moments where I didn't like neither one of them, because I was just like, they just both are acting ugly toward each other for no reason. But I went back recently, as of yesterday, because what's today? Tuesday? No, today Wednesday. No, today Tuesday. Either way. Oh, I went back yesterday, nonetheless. And I watched some of my reviews back from the week before, just to catch me up or to remind myself of some things that I've said. Because I was just like, one, I was like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm contradicting myself in my videos. But then I was just like, but as the days go on and the story gets told, my mind is going to change, because they're going to reveal to us things that we possibly didn't know before. And so my viewpoint may change, and that's okay. But nonetheless, I went back and watched some videos. And in episode 109, I said, particularly about Kat, that I think one thing that Kat is missing from this whole thing with her and Eva is that I don't feel like Kat has necessarily walked in Eva's shoes to try to understand where Eva is coming from. Of course, we cannot forget or negate the original sin, which was Ted having an affair with Leslie, because ever since this has been revealed to us, the audience, and been revealed to the Duprees, Eva being around has been a constant thing that people have had to get used to. And they also had to have, and everyone else in the community outside of the Duprees had to get used to Leslie being around. And so, if we just take away the part that Leslie did, which was, a lot, but if we look at the base as to why Leslie was like this, which she didn't have to be, of course, but if we look at the original motive that, Leslie had, it was just the fact that she was hurt by Ted. Leslie constantly wasn't chosen, which led to Eva constantly not being chosen, which led to, all the things that transpired from there. And again, I'm not saying it's okay, but putting myself in their shoes, I can understand because, when a woman is hurt, sometimes there's no telling to what extent, or if anybody is hurt really, to what extent a person would do, Leslie thought she met a guy who liked her for who she was, she spent time with him, she fell in love with him. I'm not going to say that I can't say because, we've witnessed a lot in this show so far. If Leslie knew that Ted was married, but maybe Leslie was under some kind of guise. She could have been delusional. I'm not going to ignore that because she could have, and Ted could have told her, "I'm never leaving my wife." But she was under the guise that Ted possibly was going to leave Nicole for her. My only thing is, I just wish Leslie didn't make Eva feel like her father didn't want her. But I guess because Ted told Leslie he didn't want her, he also kind of was telling Eva he didn't want her. Now, he didn't tell Eva that, but in Leslie's mind, if you don't want me, you don't want my child as well. And it was brought up that, Ted knew about the baby because Leslie told him that she was pregnant, and he told her to get rid of it. And he gave her money to get rid of it, but she never did. So that's also, something that, Ted had to account for. And then he made her go away. You know what I mean? He gave her money, or he paid her. That second time, she kind of used him, but she lied as well. But, he used Bill. There was a whole scheme to make her stay away. And she stayed away for many years. But in the many years that she stayed away, you have to think she's still raising this child from a man who she thought she could build a future with. But he don't want nothing to do with her, and she's raising this baby. So then she tries to move on with her life. She's married to a man. She's married to this man for years. I don't know if she ever really truly loved this man, but she was just trying to, I guess, find her way. And then the man died, and then they moved back to, they moved back to where everybody was at, because she was just like, well, I'm finally going to get my get back. Waiting 20 years to get back is nuts nonetheless, but this is just the way the story was told. We don't have no control over it. Sometimes I wonder, if the situation didn't play out the way it did, would Kat still feel the same toward Eva? It seems like, there throughout the family, more people have been a little bit more accepting of Eva. For example, like Martin. Martin was mad in the beginning, but, he had the lens at the end of the day, that's my sister, and I can feel for her because she didn't have dad all her life like we did. She's just not meeting him in her 20s, and she went her whole life being, withheld from this experience. So why not invite her in and, make her feel comfortable, because this is an aspect of her life that she's been missing for a while. And I was understanding of that, because I'm just like, at the end of the day, kids don't ever ask to be here, but kids are the ones who tend to suffer the most when situations like this go on. Now, I think Martin also was a little bit more compassionate toward Kat because of the fact that, you know, he understood that Leslie was a little off. You know, there was a lot of factors that contributed to Leslie being off and acting nuts. You know what I mean? Being a scorned woman, nonetheless. You know? And in this dream sequence, which very much reminded me of like a Freaky Friday-esque vibe, or it gave me like a Marvel like alternative universe type vibe, like a multiverse type vibe where, you know, realities are crossing type vibe. But all in all, they give us this sequence in which Kat is unconscious and unresponsive in the natural, but her consciousness is woke and she is put into Eva's shoes. And so she sees how her mother was pregnant. She sees how her mother wasn't chosen by her father. She was disregarded. She was shown how she came into the world, she was born, and she was never the chosen daughter. She was always the one who, you know, people didn't see it for. Even her own brother didn't really see it for her, you know. They said how she was mean and nobody liked her. And Eva was the chosen one. Even down to the name of the pocketbook, Shiva. That is crazy. But, you know, I think the writing in this episode was actually kind of good. I mean, there were times throughout the show where you could see that Eva really dealt with the shunning, the public shunning. You know what I mean? She dealt with the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, you know, the frustration of having to deal with her mama who couldn't get over a man. But like Danny said in a dream sequence, when she said Kat was going to always stand behind Nicole because that was her mother. It's the same thing with Eva. Eva always stood behind her mother, even though she didn't agree, but that's her mother. You know what I mean? And not to say, I just want to make this clear, and not to say that you should stand behind your parents right or wrong, because absolutely not. Like, you should be able to have a moral compass and be able to move and navigate situations and sometimes just agree to disagree because, you know, that's not the lens that you are in agreement with. You know what I mean? Eva was absolutely wrong for helping her mother cover up that situation with Laura. Absolutely. And even myself, putting myself in Eva's shoes, when her mama put her out because she didn't agree with it, absolutely, I would have thrown my mama under the bus. She would have been in jail. Like, no. Not only did I help you devise this plan and tore up some people's life, you got the nerve because I decided not to go through with it because I had a heart and you were so busy seeking vengeance that you locked me in a closet and then you put me out on the street. But then moving forward, you want to manipulate and use me to help get your ways and then get things accomplished that you want because you want to pay back this family, this whole family that is paying, who is not even, he's married into the family, but you are putting vengeance on a whole family of people that didn't even know nothing about you. They didn't know nothing about the situation. And then Leslie lied. She said that Ted never wanted you. He's always given his other daughter this life that he's never given you. He never wanted you. And then come to find out that was all true. Oh, it would have been a long time before I had anything good to say to my mama if that was the case. It would have been a long time. Because how could you do that to your child? How could you give your child this thought and this reality that's not true? And so sometimes I do feel like Kat was a little dismissive of all the things that went into play, you know, with that whole Eva thing. But like I said, I do understand Kat's sentiment because then on the flip side of this, you have this girl who grew up with this family, and her family was a dream. This was a picture as a portrait worthy family. She had the mama who was successful. She had the daddy who was successful. She had the brother who was successful. She's successful. She thought her parents had a perfect marriage. You know, she set her parents as the epitome of what I feel like a successful relationship and a successful marriage and successful parents look like. And then to come out one day and find out that your parents' marriage or relationship had a blemish unbeknownst to your mama, because your mama didn't know anything about this. She was totally blindsided. You know what I mean? And then the father, who she thought was so perfect, who she idolized and put on a pedestal, was an imperfect man and had a very big blemish in his life, you know? And then it's one thing to find out about the affair, but it's one thing to find out the affair and find out that there's a child that's a product of the affair. That's a constant reminder that this event happened, it went down, and it produced a child. And then to come to find out that Martin was around. Leslie knew Martin. You know what I mean? Ted brought her around. So not only have you disrespected your wife, in a sense you disrespecting your kids, you know, all because he was hurting and he couldn't go to his wife and tell his wife how he was feeling. She's struggling, you're struggling. Instead of struggling together and figuring something out, you out here putting y'all business out in the street, giving to some woman what you should have been giving to your wife who is having a hard time to conceive. And then for me, it's Ted doing this to Nicole while this other woman is now pregnant. You got her trying to conceive. And one thing that I think men just don't realize or ever give the thought to, or they minimalize, or they don't see how great of a gift or how big of a sacrifice that a woman, you know, puts herself through for them. That woman, first of all, to conceive is a miracle in itself. It's so much that goes into just conceiving a baby. Then it's a whole lot that goes into holding and growing a baby, let alone putting your life on the line to birth the baby into the world. Like, I just think sometimes men just think, oh, because you want something and it don't happen when you want it, that you don't see all the toil and the sacrifice and the mental anguish that women go through to bring forth children into the world. Like, sometimes I feel like men can be so ungrateful. And then it's the fact that your wife, the person who you went before God with and made these vows and these commitments to, is struggling to conceive, and you go and take your frustrations out on her or on the situation, and you go and you finagle, if you will, canoodle with another woman, and then she ends up getting pregnant, and you have project twins. Yes, your daughter, who you was raised in the house with, the miracle baby, if you will, is going to have a total issue with this, period. She's not going to be willing to accept. And then it's the fact that she told y'all for months something won't right. Something was going on. And y'all just thought that she was tripping. Of course. That'll make a person greatly have a strong and bold capital underline letters, have a strong disdain towards somebody who is allegedly her sister. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like there are two things that could be true. Now, like I said, I don't feel like Kat was as open to evil because of these things, but I do wonder if the situation was different, had the party not happened, had, you know, Kat known, or not Kat, had Eva, you know, found something out okay, even if the situation, if everything was still the same, minus Laura and minus the party, had Eva found out, what was going on and trying to get to know her family, and then she went to Kat and, told Kat these things and, show her proof to Kat, would the situation have been the same? Would Kat's feelings toward her have been the same? Would Kat still have, experienced this moral dilemma with giving, not even moral dilemma, I don't even want to say that. Would she still have experienced this hesitancy or this inward battle with wanting to save Eva? Would she have given up her liver, if, things between them didn't go down like they did, if they had went down differently? That's just the thing that I was wondering. But then, like I said, I know that Eva has sniped at Kat. She has totally said a lot of ugly things to Kat. The whole thing with Tomas, first of all, honestly, regardless whether Eva slept with Tomas willingly or whether Tomas swindled her and made her feel like she was wanted or whatever, Kat should have dumped Tomas like a hot tamale. And I ain't saying hot tamale because he's Latino. I'm just saying it just as an expression. Like, she should have dropped him like a bad habit. Because if the dude that you are pursuing would as far as go as mess with your sister, regardless of whatever happened between him and your sister, he is no good. He is no good. Like, Tomas wouldn't have never heard from me again. Like, no cap. I'm not even playing. Like, he worthless. And then it's just like, I think Kat totally bypassed that all because she saw red for Eva. I'm just like, girl, you need to see red for the situation all the way around. Yeah, Eva, that whole thing Eva did was wrong. And then Eva trying to throw it in her face was absolutely wrong. I just think things could have been played out so much differently between the interactions that Kat and Eva had, because they definitely had some very big blow-ups. But then there were soft and tender moments, that Eva tried to do, like, say, I heard about your grandmother, I'm sorry to hear the news. I'm praying for her. Kat sniped at her when she didn't have to. I understand y'all was saying that, it's her family business. But at the same time, when somebody is wishing you, like, I just feel like it's common decency to just, roll with it. Thank you. I thank you for your kind words, Or, there was a tender moment where Eva was at Kat's birthday and, Kat allowed Eva to stay for some cake or whatever. Or she said, I heard the good news about your grandma or something like that. And then there was that tender moment like that. I feel like had there not been friction, I do feel like Eva would have been more prone to being more nice to Kat, but I think Eva just felt like totally not wanted and totally disregarded by Kat, regardless of the situation. You know what I'm saying? And again, I want to reiterate that I am not in agreement with Eva and none of the things that Eva has done. But I too also am not in agreement with a lot of things that Kat has done. Regardless of the situation, I just think it could have been different because, like I said, kids don't ask to be here. I understand everything that Eva did wrong. Eva did a lot of things wrong. But at the end of the day, Eva didn't ask to be here. Eva is still Kat's sister, whether Kat wants to accept it or not. There were a lot of things that happened along the way that Kat didn't understand. And I don't even know if Kat even fully knew. But I feel like there should have been some grace in some areas when it came to Eva from Kat, because Eva was manipulated. Now, I ain't talking about like choices. Like Eva absolutely Eva absolutely helping her mom hide the evidence that she, hurt Laura was a choice. Eva shouldn't have done that. But when it came down to Leslie hiding Eva from Ted, Leslie telling Eva that her daddy didn't want her and that she wasn't wanted, I do think some grace should have been extended from Kat to Eva because she was lied to and manipulated. I also think Eva shouldn't have said to Kat, I thought it was very mean, that she was not wanted. Or what was that last line that Eva said to Kat in a dream sequence? When she was like, it doesn't feel good hearing it, does it? She was a basic B, and I don't never want to be around her. I would never accept her. I never wanted her here, and it would be great if she was never born. Like, that is something that is like you cannot ever take back. You know what I mean? But at the same time, on the flip side, you got to be in a place of humility. And I think that Eva will be in a place of humility now because the girl that is my sister, we never get along. I told her to her face, one day you gonna need me. You know what I mean? One day you gonna need me. And I'm not gonna show it for you. That's pie in the face. Because the one day came where your life was on the line and the girl that you never thought you would need, you needed her. That's humble. That's pie on the face. You know what I mean? And now she is in a position of, I'm forever grateful. I owe you everything. Because Kat did the ultimate act in saving her life. She laid her life down to help save Eva's. And so I think it's a big slice of humble pie for Leslie and for Eva. But on the flip side, it's also a slice of humble pie for Kat. I'm not saying the situation all the way around won't messed up, because it very much was. It very much was, and it was ghetto. But at the same time, we got to be able to take our flesh out of it sometimes and see the situation for what it is. Ted was wrong. Ted was wrong for, I don't want to say casting away, but Ted was wrong for taking away his time that he would normally give Martin and Kat and giving it all to Eva. Excuse me. He was wrong because he totally made Kat feel like she was forgotten about and that she didn't want to share her father because this is her daddy. And y'all also got to think about, for a long time, Kat was the only daughter. Y'all know what they say about daughters and fathers. You know what I mean? You know what they say about how a girl views her father. That's the first encounter with a man that a woman ever has. And so what she does going forward with a man that she interacts with intimately, she's going to expect that same thing from her father. And it was dang near the same thing with Ted, Nicole, and Leslie as it was with Tomas, Eva, and Kat. Dang near the same thing. But Kat was way more understanding with the whole Tomas thing than she was with the thing with her father and Leslie and Nicole. But Kat was right to feel, like my daddy has just forgotten about me. He's spending all this new time with his new daughter. That's his new shiny toy, I can understand that. And Ted could have done a better job. But we also got to, I feel like, again, Ted was wrong. I want to say that again. Ted was wrong. Ted was wrong for, putting Eva on the shelf. He was wrong. But also, if you find out that there was a child that was produced from your affair, and the child was hidden from you for over 20 years, and you meet her, you're going to feel immediate guilt, because that means that you failed a child as a father. Not willingly, but nonetheless, you still failed a child. So you want to try to make up for everything that you didn't do in the past, because you felt like, I failed this kid. I need to make this kid feel like I need to make this kid feel like I made the other two feel. Now, it would have been totally different if Ted found out that Eva was his child and he was just like, oh, well, she grown now. I don't want nothing to do with her now. It would have been different. If he would have, shunned Eva and was like, oh, well, she old now. You know what I mean? Or if he would have even said, regardless of what Leslie did, you could say you my daughter or not, I have a family. My family is Kat, Martin, Nicole. That's it. We would have been looking at Ted cross-eyed and would have been like, he a deadbeat daddy. How dare you find a child? How dare you find out you have a child and you don't even acknowledge her? You don't even listen to nothing she got to say. You don't even go around her. You just pay her dust. We would have been looking at Ted cross-eyed. You know what I mean? So it's just like, to me, in a sense, if you look at the grand scheme of things, Ted can't win for losing. Because here he is, he totally feels bad for what he's done. I feel like the writers could have wrote Ted, going through that process a little bit better, but there's no need to scribe or spill milk. Everything is already played out on screen. But I also feel like, there is a long-standing guilt with Ted there. He lost his family. You know what I mean? He gained a daughter, but in the end, he lost his family. So he's trying to grapple with this new reality. He's trying to grapple with the fact that, I do have to take accountability for the things that I have done. He has to take accountability for the fact that he lied and hid them. You know what I mean? He has to take accountability for the fact. Now, like I said, we were given things on screen, y'all. Everything ain't going to be told down to the T. I understand that there were, things that people feel like Ted could have done better, or Ted showed no remorse, or Ted didn't show emotion. All that can go into a myriad of things. But there, to me, in my opinion, there have been moments on screen where we can see that Ted was remorseful. Like, for example, even though it was a total lapse of judgment this night, we could see that he was remorseful and that he felt terrible. And that was the night he got drunk. Now, I'm not saying that he should have slept with Leslie, because Leslie totally took advantage of that situation. But he also shouldn't have put himself in that position anyway. But nonetheless, humans do stupid stuff all the time. He was regretful. Even after, I don't know if anybody noticed on screen, but even after Nicole took her ring off and Nicole was going on about her life, Ted still wore his wedding ring. Also, when Eva first went in the hospital and they said that there was a chance that if Eva didn't get her transplant fast, that he would die. I don't remember who he was talking to, but he told them if Eva died, I think he was talking to Shanice. He was like, if Eva died, he was like, first of all, I don't even remember the last thing that Eva even said to me. That was, and that just shows you, like, he, you know what I mean? What am I trying to say? There was a moment where he was just like, I don't even remember what Eva said to me. And to that shows, like, not remorse. What's the word I want to use? How we take such small things for granted. And then he was just like, I only been knowing her a year. There's so many things that I never got to do with her. You know, he was going down that path. You know what I mean? Which shows like he regretted, you know, a lot of the time that he didn't get to spend with her, because that moment that he shared with her before the tornado happened, that could have been the last moment, you know? Or when it was Eva's birthday and he showed up to her apartment with a basket of things that he said he wished he could have given her. Or even the moment where Eva was doing Samantha's hair and he was thinking of all the cotillions, you know, the cotillion he spent with Kat, not, you know, feeling guilty that he didn't give that to the other daughter. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like it's, I can see both sides. That's all I'm saying. I do think this situation will forever change Kat and Eva. Kat did say in her dream sequence, though, even though she probably will never accept Eva or something she said like that, she was just like, but I definitely have now walked in her shoes. So I think Kat has still come to the realization that even though she felt strongly and she was right in feeling the way she felt, and the intuition and the inclinations and everything that she felt was right, I think she realizes that there were some things that she just didn't have to do. And that's okay too. Because, you know, when you trying to heal and grow as a person, there's a lot of times where you do have to self-reflect and be like, did I have to act like that? Now, we might not have seen that on screen as much with Eva, but we're seeing it on screen with Kat. And I think she has more of an understanding. And I also said, I think, 1 or 2 episodes ago in my review, where I was just like, 2 things can happen after Kat wake up. Either Kat gonna wake up and be mad that she had complications because she did something that she didn't even want to do, which was, you know, give a piece of herself to Eva, or she will wake up, realize that she went through those complications, be thankful that she made it through, and also be thankful that she, you know, gave a piece of her liver to save Eva's life. You know, sometimes in life we go through things and we might hate the process. We might hate the process. Like, Kat hated the process of all of that. But for yourself and for your sake, sometimes you just gotta have that internal battle and then look within yourself and find a solution and find a peace within yourself. And I think that's what Kat had to do in order to move on, because then it would be a continuous cycle. For example, like in her dream sequence, you can see how Nicole kept talking about Ted and talking about Ted and talking about Ted. And then even Nicole's family was like, Nicole should have been got over this. You know, she don't have to keep going through herself. She never moved on. She never had to do this. And then when Nicole got down to Uptown and Martin and Eva and Chelsea were there, and it was like, you see how she is? You see how she just acting? She don't got to be like that. She never got over Ted. She never moved on from the situation. I feel like that's kind of what the characters was kind of saying about, in regards to Kat, about Eva. Again, everything that Kat did, everything that Kat said, everything, I don't want to take that away from Kat, because I feel like Kat had a right to feel that way, because she felt betrayed. And anybody will say anything when they felt betrayal. You know what I mean? But also, I do think there were times where Eva was seeking forgiveness, or she wanted to start off on a new page. And so if a person denies you of that, what can you do? If a person never push you in a place to where you can move on and feel like you can be happy, especially if y'all got mutuals and y'all got to be around each other from time to time. And you know, some people are okay with, you know, you do you, I do me. We can coexist, but we don't got to. And sometimes you do got to do that. You know, some people feel that way. But sometimes I feel like, you know, as I get older, you don't have to be around who you don't want to be around. But you do also, in situations, have to you have to have that inner talk with yourself. And I do feel like you do have to find peace about the situation, or else you're going to be in a warp the rest of your life. And that kind of stuff just eats away at a person, honestly. Like, that's kind of stuff that make people sick. Eat away at you. It eats away at your health. Eats away at your being. You just gotta have peace and let that go. And even personally, like, there are situations in my life where, even though I know I was wronged, I had every right to feel the way I felt. But for me, I had to make peace. I had to sit down with myself and was just like, I'm over it. I'm letting it go. Because it's really not that deep. Like, I got so much. Let them do them. God will handle them. And, you know, I can be at peace with myself knowing that I didn't do nothing wrong. And there's no need for me to have no hate or no ill will or no malice or any kind of that thinking. Because that ain't gonna do nothing but weigh me down and make me evil as a person. I just need to let it go and just move on. Time and life will handle itself. You know what I mean? Like, it handles itself 9 times out of 10 way better. You know what I mean? So yeah, I thought this episode was neat. It was neat to see something from another perspective. It was a good self-reflection. You know what I mean? And even when Eva was awake and Ted went and told Eva the news, they joked about it, you know, about Kat waking up, because she wouldn't dare let Eva wake up and know she's okay, and then she not wake up and be okay too. But there, you could hear, like, Eva, the concern when they found out that Kat had complications and Kat didn't wake up. She was just like, or when she even first woke up and they told her what happened, she was like, Mom, I need Kat to come in my room. I need to tell her thank you. Because she quickly realized the gravity of the situation. I want to tell her thank you. Mom, do you think Kat will be okay? You can't go through all of that and regardless of the relationship you have with a person, it still won't evil for them. You just can't. To me, it's pertinent and impossible. Like, so yeah, y'all. I know I talked a lot, but I felt a lot, and this episode had me thinking a lot, self-reflecting a lot. But yeah, y'all. Like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Leave me a comment down below, and I'll be back with episode 115 review. This is